Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at your horoscopes for the month of December. I've got the team with me today to break everything down for you, and we have got some really interesting transits that we're going to be using as the focus for your horoscopes. I'll tell you about those in a second, but before we begin, remember to like and subscribe. Share your comments and reflections if you have them. It really means a lot to us if you listen and you haven't yet subscribed. To do that helps our channel and community grow immensely. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Don't forget, right now we are in the midst of Kickstarter season. We are trying to get to 2,043 backers supporting this channel by New Year's Eve. This is our 12th year of hosting this Kickstarter at the end of the year. If you appreciate the content on this channel, a lot goes into it. It's now 7 days a week. This is now becoming a platform where we're helping support the growth of some of the talented students in our community, which you've gotten to know in some of these programs just like this. We have need-based tuition for all of our programs that we're able to offer consistently. And that's a part of our business plan because of the success of the Kickstarter, where you can find all of the best deals on our classes and world-class astrology education. I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter really briefly. At the end of today's talk, I will tell you in a little informational video about all of the rewards that you can get when you support us. There's a year ahead horoscope reading. It's about 6 hours worth of horoscopic content. There is an astrology calendar for the year ahead that maps out all the transits I'll be covering on my channel. Some interesting talks and guided meditations that I'm not releasing anywhere else. The astrological overview of the year ahead. Lots of good stuff here, and class passes. You can bundle all of our programs together with 1, 2, 3, or 4 class passes. These take the savings of the classes over 50%. So it's a really, really good time to get on board with stuff we're doing at Nightlight. Support the channel. If we're a place of spiritual inspiration for you in your everyday life, then back us, support not just myself, but our whole team of people here at Nightlight. We really appreciate it. All right. Well, on that note, I'm really excited to bring our crew back in. Kelsey, Emily, Mal, Q. Welcome back, guys.
Hello.
Yay. We're back. We're back together to break down horoscopes for December after a very watery last couple of months. I feel like everything in astrology was just waterland. Everyone has like oversaturated. We're like a sponge that needs to be squeezed out. This month is really interesting, though. We're going to take things in a slightly different direction. I'm going to introduce what we're talking about, then hand it over to these fabulous ladies to break your horoscopes down for you. I'm going to put the chart up on the screen. So here we are. We're recording this just prior to Thanksgiving here. Oops, that's by hours. Let's go by days. So I'm going to take you into December, everyone, and I'm going to show you exactly what we're looking at. Now, in order to simplify this, I'm going to take a few things out of the picture just for now, so that we can have a little bit simpler view. Hold on, I'm almost there. All right, this ought to do it. So what's happening here in December that we're going to be taking a look at today are a long series of squares. And you know what? I realized I shouldn't have taken out Neptune. Let's put Neptune back. Let's do this. All right. Now I've got us. We have a series of squares that are taking place between Sagittarius and Pisces. Both Jupiter ruled signs, but one the masculine fire temple, and one the feminine water temple. So a lot of Jupiterian energy with Jupiter in Cancer in the background. We may be considering the role of Jupiter in Cancer throughout this month of astrology as well. But the main thing I want to show you are these series of squares. The month of December is in many ways just one square after another. Here you're going to see Mars first in the sign of Sagittarius. This is around December 7th, starting to come into the square with Saturn, and then it'll flow right through the square to Neptune. You can see that right there. So this series of squares that Mars opens us with, the first, say, 14, 15 days of December, is in many ways reflected by this square. After that square passes, then the sun will come through the same exact situation. The sun will then square Saturn and then square Neptune. There'll be a new moon that forms in the mix of that. This is right around the solstice, is about December 19th. And then Venus will get in on the square to Saturn and then the square to Neptune, right? And then if we take this forward to almost the exact end of the month, on December 29th, 30th, Mercury will make one final square from Sag to Pisces, hitting Saturn. Early January, of course, Mercury will complete that by squaring Neptune. So, in other words, we have Mars, the Sun, Venus, and Mercury moving through Sagittarius in squares to Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. We're going to try to broadly cover that in your horoscopes today by simply talking about the squares, the whole sign squares between Sagittarius and Pisces in your birth chart. So, in order to do that, I'm going to back this up so that we get kind of a nice representation of all of these planets in Sag. And this isn't a date. You see December 14th on the screen. I'm just picking a date where you can see all of the planets in Sagittarius and all of the planets in Pisces, including the North Node, Saturn, and Neptune. And we're going to roll through all 12 whole sign horoscopes, just giving you this view of the squares. These two areas of our charts and the square conversation between them are very powerful this month. When you see that many squares repeating over the course of an entire calendar month, you can bet that the creative tension, maybe a little bit of conflict or stress around these two areas of your chart is going to be lit up. And that's what we're going to be breaking down for you today. I'm going to hand it off to the ladies to take you through this. I'm going to put myself at the bottom. We'll rotate Q up to the top. And they're going to take you through everything. Q has the fire signs, Mal has the earth signs, Kelsey has air, and Emily has water. I might add a few things in as we go, but really I want you to hear from these wonderful people today. So I'll let them do most of the talking. And before any of you are taking your first turn, if any of you guys want to just comment broadly on the squares in general, that's fine. You could offer some initial thoughts when it's your turn for your first horoscope. Let's do it that way. Okay, let's hand it over to Q, who's going to take us through Aries to begin with. And what I'm going to do for each one is just make a little drawing arrow so you know what you're looking at.
Awesome. Okay, Aries. So y'all see what we're working with here. It is hitting your 9th and 12th house, these squares. Generally, my ideas or just like feelings around these squares coming, off of or through the grand water trine, which we're not going to dive too much into that. But there's been a lot of emotional, cathartic energy that we have been working our way through, and looking at these squares coming up after that, it feels as though there's like challenge to really show up and work through and persevere through the growth that can be, I feel like, birth through all of the grand water trine healing energy that's been like washing waves of experiences around us and onto us. And now we're like working through the challenge of meeting those realities where they're at and seeing if we're willing to rise to the challenge to really have something substantial that we can build off of going into this next year, 2026, before these planets shift into the next sign of Aries. So for Aries specifically, just looking at the 12th and 9th house, we're looking at themes revolving around travel, philosophy, vision casting, seeking higher knowledge and wisdom, and just your belief systems in general, and how that works or is working against or in a challenging way with those 12th house energies and themes around the self-undoing of it all and things that isolate you and take you to liminal spaces that have you really in this inner world of how the mechanics behind the stage, that backstage world that really fuels what we see as far as what's in that first house, the subconscious mechanism. So we're seeing there being a challenge with travel, again, vision casting, and the things that kind of bring us to those liminal spaces away from the world that, I don't know, brings us into community with everything. So you're really working on like the potentiality of a job opportunity that might require for you to sacrifice something. Or especially looking at how Mercury has been in retrograde, playing with that eighth and ninth house, those themes, it could be that Mercury finally moving out of that eighth house has brought about a lot of the reality of your situations, your relationships, and the ways in which you feel like you should be moving in this world. And that's going to be challenged by the 12th house and what types of self undoing you work through having these new philosophies, having these new beliefs after realizing that the things that you're in relationship with, the karmic, I guess, energy that comes from being in relationship to either hobbies, people, things that don't necessarily serve you, those have shifted, and the way that you are now moving forward could challenge what previously were self-limiting beliefs living in that 12th house that were causing all types of delusions and illusions and just self-doubt. I have spoken to a few Aries who have expressed to me that they've been through a lot of like dramatic experiences as of late, and how now moving into this new path, either they're creating a new blog, they're putting out or coming together with different communities and intentionally seeking new spiritual ways of being. And that's totally changing their backstage psyche on how they feel like they can show up in the world. So very much like tension between these two houses, but with the new moon there's going to be this moment of like seeding that can come from all the things that you're experiencing with those challenges for you to kind of set the stage for the next 6 months of like, okay, I'm going to work through this. I'm not avoiding things anymore. We're facing things head on. And into this new year, I feel empowered to really be moving in the right direction. The groundwork that I'm doing now to really face my challenges will propel me to the most vital expression of that Aries energy. You could feel fatigued with all of those planets in Sag and Pisces, random bouts of just like kind of feeling a little confused, but there's clarity if you sit with it for sure.
Nice. I will add to this. Let me unblock my face from the banner. I'll add just one little thought, which is that I have found that squares between the 9th and 12th, really of any kind, are often conducive to the kind of enlightenment that comes through health and healing crises. Small, big, the word crises might be even a little too dramatic. Just when things feel like they're coming off the rails or there's confusion or overwhelm, it's amazing how the 9th house at that time can be like, oh, this is what the Buddha was talking about. Like, oh, this is
Adam. I spoke with someone who's the Aries rising and was just like in an abusive relationship, and through that, like, was seeking spiritual guidance and was able to, like you said, the Buddha was speaking to them the whole time, and now they're like in this journey of sharing what it is that they've learned from that abusive relationship and really stepping into like wanting to be a guide to other people, and how that's really changing their perspectives in the 12th house, for sure.
Love that. Yeah.
So crises for sure for Aries. I think it's been a little intense for them from who I've spoken to too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the 12th can be those most meaningful difficulties that you experience in your life kind of difficulties, especially when there's some nice tie into the 9th. These can be part of your learning and education somehow as a soul. Great. Well, that was fantastic. Q, you ready for me to keep going?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Let's go to Taurus next. And I'm going to draw out our squares here. Mal has earth signs. Here we go.
All right. Yeah. Taurus rising. We've got this square playing out in the 8th house of shared resources and the 11th house of networks and groups and like our greater support systems. And generally, the Sag Pisces square, I like to think of that square as the priest versus the mystic, and maybe the tensions that the priest and the mystic might face while trying to discuss something. Like an idea that maybe the priest is a little bit more dogmatic and feels a little bit more strongly about the truth and the truth being written in texts or being a little bit more tangible. Whereas the mystic might have a more intangible sense of truth that can only be reached within themselves. So I'm thinking about how this might play out in the area of groups and networks. Specifically, Taurus risings, Saturn has been in this house since February 2023. And I think this square is highlighting some maybe final lesson with Saturn being activated in that 11th house of groups and networks. Like maybe some of you have face a situation where you left a group because the belief system no longer aligned with you. Kind of reminds me a little bit of those like breaking free Mormon reality TV shows where like a Mormon like leaves their community and then has to find a totally new community in the outside world and the challenges with that. I also think the connection with the 8th house might be bringing up some karma around reciprocity. So I'm even thinking about you, Adam, as a Taurus rising, and it's Kickstarter season for you. And that's very 8th house, 11th house. You're asking for other people to use their resources to boost you up. And I'm thinking about just the ability to receive that is actually harder than it looks. And I think it might require some Taurus risings to maybe dig a little deeper, maybe with any sort of, maybe it's more negative learned behaviors when it comes to feeling that asking for help or support is taboo in some way. I know a lot of us have probably learned that, in our lives at some point. Now, another story that comes to mind that I think some Taurus risings could be feeling is just this general sense of, I've walked away or I've maybe parted ways in the last couple years with a group or with a network that didn't serve me. But now, like, who is coming in and how do I find that group and support network that actually is aligned with my calling or my beliefs? We could think about this maybe in the sense of coming out of the broom closet, meaning like maybe you're telling your non-mystical friends that you're into astrology, tarot, spirituality, and maybe those friends weren't that supportive. You felt, okay, I need to go out there and find some other friends in the spiritual community. That could be a story for the Taurus rising. One other story that comes to mind too is potentially a story of maybe even like coming out as queer, or this sense of, oh my gosh, I'm queer, I have so many straight friends, but where's my where's my gay like chosen family, and how do I find them? And just kind of the challenges of maybe realizing one group is loving and fulfilling in some ways, but then there's some maybe other people or a group that's waiting for you to find them. And how do you do that? How do you put yourself out there? How do you take that risk and show up to the new moon ritual in your city for the first time? Those are some things I'm thinking about for Taurus rising.
Oops, there we go. Love that. Yeah, I've found that another, for me, a question that, because it's funny, not intentionally, when the Kickstarter first began, I did it the last 40 days of the year, and I was not consciously connecting that to transits that would be going through my 8th house as a kind of ritual every single Kickstarter year for 12 years now. And many people have like commented on that. My astrological friends are always like, isn't it interesting that your 8th house gets lit up every Kickstarter season? And I'm like, yeah. For me, I also think, and maybe other Tauruses can relate to this, that there can be some sense of what, like, how do I do something good with what's been given? Um, that's always a question for me during this Kickstarter time where, people are contributing because they like the content. And to me, it's important to go, okay, well, how do we make the content even better? Or how do we make it a little bit more accessible for people? How do we make the programs a little bit better? How do I take what's being given and channel it into something greater than myself? There's a question that many people run into that I think is sort of baked into the 8th, 11th dynamic when they receive an inheritance. And that question is, how do I use this wisely for things that are connected not just to my own happiness, but to the greater welfare of, say, my family or my kids or the future generations? Like if someone comes into generational wealth because of an inheritance, I've seen this in my astrological practice enough times to know that the best kind of people, and I think often that's the people going to astrologers because they care about something bigger than themselves, are asking, what do I do with this? Not just, can I spend it on a Ferrari right out the gate? It's like, what do I do to make sure that anything that I come in, good fortune that I come into, which is very Jupiter ruled 8th house kind of thing at times, how do I make sure that it's connecting me with the right people? And there can also be questions about how much do I think I could profit from something, but then that would compromise my values. Like I cannot tell you, my inbox during Kickstarter season, the more successful the Kickstarter has gotten, is like filled with sharks. There are so many people, you would not believe how many people want to try to get something from me in some kind of deal with marketing, advertising, PR companies, like all sorts of stuff. Because when they see that a Kickstarter does like ours does every year, they're like, well, how could this potentially profit me? And then how could I profit you? And it's all snake oil. It's just gross. So I think there's some temptations that come up like that too. But anyway, just a few thoughts to add in there. Since the Kickstarter is a really unique kind of 8th, 11th thing that can serve as a metaphor for maybe other Tauruses out there. Thank you, Mal. That was great. Let's go to Kelsey for air, and we've got Gemini rising, and the squares are coming across 7 and 10.
All right. So for Gemini risings, well, first, I want to just say mutable squares, they require a lot of flexibility. And I think with Sag, it's about truth seeking. And with Pisces, maybe being a little bit more willing to surrender. And, both of these require that flexibility. I think it's a big focus on bringing form to the formless with this final stretch of Saturn and Pisces. So for Gemini rising, I was thinking about how this is happening between the 7th and the 10th. And Gemini is a sign that's always exploring duality. So 7th house transits can be really important opportunities to learn about yourself through showing you your opposite and helping you kind of course correct after some pretty big realizations about success in the material world after the grand water trine was occupying the Arta houses in your chart. So I'm thinking about the planets in the 7th squaring Saturn, Neptune in the 10th, maybe about paying attention to the influential people that are in your life that maybe have an impact on your dreams and how they're forming, and maybe how others contribute to or perhaps complicate your vision and sense of purpose in the material world. And again, 10th house stuff can always be anything professional, but also just whatever you're doing in the world and the impact that you want to have. So, a question would be for Gemini, what vision is in its final gestation period? How are your social connections creating some need to change the way you approach that? Are you enjoying what you're doing and who you're connected to? The Pisces 10th house can symbolize that really passionate, emotional tie, that spiritual tie to purpose when it comes to your impact, but also maybe some porous boundaries. So perhaps this month you're more acutely aware of your personal vision versus the visions of others. And this could also be about needing to avoid comparison, seeing momentum build in another's life, or maybe what someone else is doing is serving to inspire you or to motivate you to push and make your dream materialize. And maybe for some, this could be about making or breaking commitments in relationships in general and changing your status in some way. With Saturn Neptune stationing direct, I think there's a lot of clarity coming through for everyone about what work is required to manifest a dream. So I think also what comes with that is understanding what dreams might not be as realistic. But I am a Pisces moon, so I have to say, I think holding on to a dream that turns out to just be a fantasy still serves a purpose because it teaches us to be creative and to broaden our horizons and keep pushing further into the future and further into our potential. So, faith and belief are really powerful. They can be the soil for which something else can grow. And I think these squares are like the final test, final exam of Saturn and Pisces stay, and really showing you maybe where you've pushed too far or maybe where you could push a little harder. I know the Pisces house can be like where we have flow state, but sometimes too much flow state, you need some form there. So I think Saturn's really taught you that. Maybe some plans haven't worked out, so you could figure out which path would work better or learn some patience or which sacrifices feel worthy to you. Where you can work through limits is where you can develop grit. And knowing your limits can actually just clarify how important something actually is to you. So, with all this being ruled by Jupiter in Cancer in your second, I think what you're committing to right now needs to really feel nurturing and safe to the soul. And sometimes taking risks is the safer option, like that Anais Nin quote, "The day came where the risk to stay tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." So I think these squares speak to that, but also maybe just a lot of busyness with other people, clients, contracts, interpersonal relationships. Maybe someone's pushing you to a place where you're not feeling as free. Maybe there's more demand in your career or what you're doing in the world. And, it could also be the exact opposite. Maybe someone in your life is waking you up to the options that you have in making a dream possible. There could be some collaboration happening. I think a main question would be what truth are you seeking and how you want to be seen and which relationships support that, and then maybe how much are images and ideals of others influencing these things. And that's what I've got for my Geminis.
I love it. I think something that might be sneaky for any of us to consider as we're looking at our horoscopes this month would be the ruling position of Jupiter in Cancer. And I kept thinking of that as Kelsey was going through this horoscope, because there could be some conversations around professional direction, vocation, the relationships in your life. But some of the backdrop might be about money and resources. That Jupiter ruling both from the second just had me thinking, I could see where a couple is saying, well, like, a lot of couples these days both have to work, so whose turn is it to be the breadwinner, or can I seek out a slightly different job that's going to make me happier, but maybe doesn't offer as much to our equation? It tilts the balance. Someone else has to pick up the slack. But, relationships in this day and age to work usually have to take turns with respect to whose time it is to shine or earn more or work harder or work a little bit more. And naturally, those things, I think if people are sensitive and careful about them, they tend to balance out over time. But this could be a moment where it's like an inflection point in a relationship about career, about work, about money, and questions about how to maintain the right balance or kind of strike the right balance in as a couple. That thought came to mind. I'm sure there are other ways we could read the presence of Jupiter in the second, and not everyone listening to this is going to be in a relationship, but yeah, just food for thought. Okay, let's move along to Cancer. And Emily, I feel like you have some Cancer in your chart, Emily.
I do. My moon is there.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
I have a very sensitive Cancer moon, takes everything personally.
I love that about you.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and look at this in the 6th and the 9th.
Yeah, so really similar actually to what Mal said about, I loved the priest versus the mystic. I've been thinking of December in general with all of these squares between Sagittarius and Pisces, as my key phrase has been a crisis of faith. I think with both of these Jupiterian ruled signs that Jupiter is all about faith, right? That's kind of my main overall feeling for the month of December. I think for our Cancers specifically, this does feel a little existential to me. I feel like the 6th house with Mars, Sun, Venus, and Mercury all moving through there, I'm thinking that there could be a sense of ambition, will, drive, passion, and desire to be a little righteous around being a martyr. Like there might be a sense of, I feel a drive to give of myself and to self-sacrifice in order to pursue some higher meaning that I feel is purposeful. This is very Sagittarian, right? And that might come at odds with a belief structure, a political ideation, a philosophical framework, a guiding life principle, even a teacher, a mentor, or a guide who you've long respected that is maturing, with Saturn having been there for the last, most of the last over 2.5 years, that's maturing through contraction or constriction or the recognition of limitations, or is dying. It's reached its expiration point. You're coming to a point of realizing that whatever that belief was, or whoever that person was that was on your pedestal, is like, okay, that has reached its expiration point. And that is where I feel the existential feeling comes in, is that purpose-driven desire to give of the self and sacrifice of the self, with all those planets in Sagittarius in the 6th. Without that guiding principle to back up the self-sacrifice, we might fall into a very common Sagittarian trait of nihilism. Like, what's the point? Why am I giving so much of myself if I'm starting to lose faith in that belief that I've long held, or that it's starting to mature or contract or feel limitations around? So that's kind of what I'm thinking for Cancer. I will bring in here that Jupiter, the ruling planet of both of these signs, as we've already said, is in your 1st house and will remain there until the end of June next year. And I think if we can lean in to that, the healing properties, the kind of what Jupiter really wants to do is create coherence, unification, expansion, and growth. And oftentimes, as we know, when we've talked about, the healing, when you're in the midst of it, can be, a little painful or subjectively uncomfortable. It's like when you go through detox to get off of a substance, addiction. That's like you're growing and expanding and healing from that, but it can be uncomfortable. So I feel like this month of December, with this potentially existential crisis of faith between where am I wanting to self-sacrifice, hopefully in the pursuit of a dream or a belief, and that belief might be ending or changing or growing up or maturing. This might be an inflection point along this year-long process of that expansion and personal growth that's taking place with Jupiter in your 1st house. So that's what I'm thinking for our Cancers out there.
Love it. I think like one of the things that comes to my mind is like Saturn, Neptune in the 9th can be like a sort of spiritual malaise or melancholy that comes in. And these periods of time have been written about by, whether it's the dark night of the soul, which is pretty kind of an extreme archetype, but more so just sometimes life doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, and it can feel kind of boring and very mundane in some sense of the transcendental. Exciting times in life, even stressful times, often feel very creative and numinous. Like we're right in the soup of existence. And even if it's difficult, we sense that it's very meaningful, that what's happening, and that we're going through a kind of trial. But when nothing is happening, speaking of the nihilism,
Yeah.
I think we can sort of lose faith, not because our doubts are so strong, but because there just seems to be a lack of something substantive or meaningful. And what I think Sagittarius's brave response can be from the 6th house, to use a language that's like familiar in my own psyche, is like, get off your ass and go to the gym. Go run, go sweat. You know, you need to move your body, get to that Pilates class, go take a dance class, you know, go out dancing, whatever it is, you know, move, stop. You know, the reason that nothing's moving is because you're not moving.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the Jupiter in the 1st house retrograde too, is the feeling of a little bit of stagnation coming in for Cancers. Like the best way to address that is to persevere through activity and action, and something where the Sagittarian could get nihilistic in the 6th. Another Sagittarius response would be redemption and heroism and conquering the malaise by getting up off your seat and getting your spirit rolling, you know?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that could also be like a medicine for some Cancers out there.
Yeah. And in fact, I actually have, I wrote the word competition down, and I failed to say it. It's on my notes here, but I failed to say it. There's something about like, what can you feel competitive about? Like what's something that you can get up and move towards? Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Which is not like Cancer rising's MO, you know, like I'm thinking of my wife, and she's got 3 planets in Aries. So that changes the equation a little bit, but it's not, and I'm a Cancer too. So, you know, I feel like the thought that life should be something other than sweet and sort of safe it's not always the easiest space to get out of, into something like, you know, life should be like your hair blowing in the wind while you're riding on a horse 40 miles an hour through an open plain or something, which is so Sagittarian, you know? Yeah. Anyway, thank you. That was great. I love that. Let's move to Leo, and Miss Q, take us away.
Awesome. And you're right, Adam. As a Sag rising, that's exactly what I like to do in my free time. I'd be 40 miles per hour every day, wind in the hair, whenever I have free time to do so. So
I love it.
But for our Leo risings, oh, my Leo fire signs, these squares are happening within your 5th and 8th house. And so we're definitely seeing your creativity, your joy, your childhood creativity, and just like essence really coming into some tension with that 8th house of how other people who are in relationship with you, the esteem of others and how they relate to you, what karmic energies come from that, whatever like taboo, occult interest, or pools that you have with that creative energy that you're seeing kind of be ignited and highlighted in this 5th house. There's something that could feel quite, like I said, karmic about the ways in which you're finding yourself wanting to explore your curiosities, creativity, creatively from that 5th house. We had Mercury again playing with the 4th and 5th, really bringing to light some of the roots of your chart, the truths of who you are and how you feel most safe, most stable and comfortable, being reflected upon and looked at once again from the 4th house. And now with Mercury bringing those truths to the 5th house for you, and really being again highlighted by all of those planets working through the 5th house, you could feel compelled to explore something romantically or creatively and share that with the world. We have Jupiter and Cancer in that 12th house. So again, some pretty subconscious, subterranean thoughts and realizations that have been also reflected upon with Jupiter in retrograde, giving you time to really like feel through the 12th house energy and support both what energies are at play with the 8th house and that 5th house, as Jupiter rules both those houses. So there's very much this energy, I would say, around like the potentiality of you seeking something romantically or going after something creatively and finding that there's like tension, or because there weren't things that were completely set in stone or clarified for you in that eighth house, that boundaries are now needing to be talked about, that karmic repercussions from what it is that you're expanding in that fifth house, where are you running into issues when it comes to the realization that, hey, I feel like I've been letting my energy kind of seep out of me in that eighth house. And with the fifth house, I feel like there's a way that I can creatively redirect or steer that energy towards something that is revitalizing to the self. If you like to tie, Leo to the fifth house, this is very like Leo energy that's being like highlighted in that fifth house. And so it could be very centered around the like I am energy of self, and wanting to make sure that you are no longer like suppressing your creative pursuits, your even like with your children, you may find that themes around your children, if you are a parent, kind of coming up in this way of like, oh wow, like they are much more tied into this whole orchestra, this play that we're a part of, than I was maybe giving them credit for. And this opens up a new way of you all being in relationship with one another. And also just like what comes from their exploration, their curiosity of their creation, as well. I have some Leo friends that are seeing themselves at this precipice of really bringing to light some of their like not darker qualities. They kind of claim them as dark. I think Leos have this tendency to want to be light, the light in the sun of it all, but they're feeling some of these seedier, just like deeper embedded desires coming to the surface, and they're wanting to share this in a very beautiful, creative, warm, life-giving way, but they're not necessarily feeling like the way or the message that they're trying to portray is that. I think that they're having the tough conversations with that eighth house and the relationship that they have with others, and realizing that it's okay. It's really okay for you to creatively express yourself, to explore what that creation and expression looks like, and understanding that there's going to be losses with that, but maybe you're just turning off some of the faucets where you've been overperforming or like caring too much about what the repercussions will be if you show up in this way. Is really asking you to authentically express, but be okay with having the tough conversations, because we do have Mercury wrapping it all up on the 30th. Like, there needs to be discussions about what's being reciprocated from the payoff of your creative pursuits. When you're collabing with other people, what's being discussed, what contracts are being made. Like, don't be afraid to kind of push up against what's uncomfortable, and make sure that you are not allowing for there to be any manipulation from the self or from others that you are working with, that you're in business with, that you're wanting to create this abundance with. I think that the retrograde of Jupiter in Cancer is still telling you to kind of take things slow, allow yourself to feel through all that is kind of coming in on your plate right now, and the ability to grow with others. Don't move too fast. With the eighth house, I'm kind of always on the side of like, allow things to like gently unfold, because it can kind of feel, I wouldn't say like tower-like, but I feel like the eighth house can kind of arise in people this feeling of like do or die. And so it's just like, this doesn't have to be do or die. Like, really read the fine print. Don't be afraid to rediscuss what's already been discussed. And just make sure you feel confident in what you're about to birth into life with whoever, with whatever it is that you're on the precipice of doing that for or with. But for Leos, it's really, I'm excited to see what you all in your creative pursuits, what that brings you to, but understand that there could be just like challenges that kind of make you sit back and reassess how it is that you're going to deliver what it is that you're ready to provide to the world and share of yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Little image that came to my mind, you're talking about the Leos wanting to be so sunny.
Yeah.
And the fifth house Sagittarian energies, you could describe them as very heroic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I express myself creatively in the world through acts of heroism. And here's the thing, is that if you think about most hero movies, there's someone that needs saving, there's someone that needs rescuing, and the hero's greatness is rooted in the sacrifice that they make to save or help someone else, which is all noble. But most of the time, and this was something that James Hillman pointed out, and Jung, and all archetypal psychologists have mentioned. I remember Richard Tarnas talking about this one time. At the end of a hero movie, the hero's arm is dangling off. They look like they're about to die. They're covered in blood, and they're stumbling across the finish line. They're just totally mangled. I feel like sometimes, just being like a resident ascendant ruler, Venus and Leo, we're shocked that we feel so beat up by the heroic story that we've chosen. It's like, and then it can be like, yeah, well, you decided that this was the story you wanted. Are you surprised that someone needs saving and that it can actually be a drag to, it's like we want the glory, the Leo. This is how I identify sometimes Leo. We want the glory of looking like a hero, but we forget that story can be a real bummer when it comes to, like in real life.
Yeah.
It's not a princess. It's like your whiny, it's like your whiny drugged out cousin who needs bailing out of jail or something. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm being a jerk, but it's someone that like maybe you don't really want to save, you don't really care about. And so some of the sacrifices that can come up around the desire to be a hero can make us reflect on who is this really about? Oh, maybe this is actually about me and my ego and the need to look like a hero rather than some genuine interest I have in helping other people. So I just feel like this 5th, 8th connection with the Jupiter in the 12th could have us reflecting, us Leos out there, on what are we in this for? Why are we doing this? Is this a sacrifice that's worth making, or are we just hoping that it'll boost up our ego or whatever?
Yeah, very much so. Like, am I showing up and being a Captain Saver, and I don't need to be Captain Saving everybody around here? That's why I was just like, is my energy leaking in places because I feel like I have to, when I actually, what does this feel by? Am I performing? So Adam, I didn't want to call the Leos out that I personally know like that, but Adam, thank you for doing that. Yeah.
I'll just say it because, it's like, I feel like when Leos make a sacrifice that they really feel is worth it and that's transcendent, it's amazing how egoless it can be. And that's why the sign is called generous, just like the sun is generous.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're doing those acts of generosity for the ego, it can be very subtle. And then we'll find ourselves in relationships with people that drain us, that don't seem to appreciate us, that we resent helping. That's because it's been about us. You know what I mean? At least that's one way of looking at it. So anyhow, I'll pass this along. We'll keep going to Virgo. Thank you, Q. That was awesome. And Mal's going to tell us about Virgo.
Yeah, I loved that, guys. My Mars and Leo definitely resonated. Yeah, Virgo rising. We've got this Pisces Sag square in the 7th house of partnership and the 4th house of the home. And I can't believe how on point this square is for one of my clients. And I'll speak really broadly to their situation. But essentially, in the past couple months, they've had a situation related to their health that led them to really be forced into taking an extended leave of absence from work and be stuck at home. Now, this might be a little bit of an overgeneralization for Virgo risings, but there aren't many Virgo risings I know that want to be stuck at home, left to their own devices, because the Virgo rising, has more energy wanting to serve, help, organize, keep things flowing efficiently at work or whatever it is. So, I use this client's story as an example because this client had to get really well acquainted and almost reintroduced to their home life by force, which feels kind of, Saturn squaring the 4th house, right? And also, though, there's been a lot of, I think, room for growth and epiphany, which I think can be a 4th house theme in a roundabout way. In Hellenistic astrology, we talk about the fourth house being a house of loss, which we don't see so much in a more modern context. In modern astrology, we usually give loss and death to the eighth house. But loss and death can also be attributed to the fourth house and sometimes even the 12th house in Hellenistic astrology. So I'm also thinking about like loss of some kind of identity or some kind of over identification with what we do in the outside world, and then having to deal with that in the private internal world of the fourth house. Um, Now, similar to Taurus risings, I think the Virgo risings also are dealing with potentially a bit of karma around reciprocity and asking for help from others. I'm getting that from the seventh house connection, because I think the seventh house can also revolve around potentially maybe our capacity for vulnerability, our capacity for connection. And that all relates to our ability to ask for help, or, hey, I'm stuck at home. I'm sick. Can you bring me soup? And do we have those partnerships that are supporting us from the background? And I think for Virgo risings, with that Saturn transiting the seventh house for the past couple years, for some Virgo risings, this is more of a ending or a loss of a partnership. But I think for a lot of Virgo risings, it's maybe the opposite, the reassurance or some sort of story that proves the longevity and the foundation of a partnership, and the kind of ability for your partnership to help you through those harder times, especially having to do with loss in the fourth house. So that's what I'm thinking for the Virgo risings.
Love it. Yeah, I think I always end up reflecting on my daughter when we do Virgo rising. And one thing I find really interesting is she's going through a period of time that I suspect will become amplified during this month of December, with Jupiter ruling all these things in her 11th since last June. She's been going through a period of time where she's more aware now of the fact that her family is a little different than a lot of the families at school. Mom's a energetic herbalist, dad's an astrologer, and she's starting to realize, oh, there are a number of people and families. She's starting to gauge, like when she talks about what her dad does for a living at a friend's house, and their parents act differently, passive aggressively, or they hide their judgment behind things that sound to her not sincere, like, oh, that's nice, or you know what I mean? So one thing that comes to my mind for Virgos are, questions about that feeling of where home is. And we want some connection between the social happiness of our lives that's more public and communal, and the internal reality. The culture or values of our home and family are usually correlated to what community or culture we seek out, or in contrast to what we lacked in our home or family, we seek something out in community for support and healing. So I could see a lot of that going on, not only looking for a correlation between the private internal family life and what gives that place meaning and warmth and social coherence and connection in the external world, but also how those things map onto interpersonal relationships. So a kind of social, ancestral, communal vibe for Virgos that I feel is standing out here. All right, we'll keep rolling, and we're going to go to air next, which is Kelsey. So here's the square between 3 and 6 for Libras.
All right. So for Libra rising, these squares from the third, your local environment, the regular characters in your life, your exchanges within them, your busy day-to-day life, and as well as your psychology and how you derive joy from these interactions that you have that are familiar to you, the pleasures of expressing yourself and being an individual with unique interests. And then we've got Saturn, Neptune in the sixth, the place of work, health, routines, and the sacrifices that we have to make so we can build a life that we're proud of. So, the first thing that came to mind for my Libras is cultivating patience with the creative process, maybe with scheduling changes and different personalities in your environment that you're maybe collaborating with, maybe discernment in the workload that you're taking on. Also, discernment in your daily habits, seeing the limits and boundaries of where you may need to align your daily rituals to have the capacity to actualize your goals. This could be also about the kind of content that you're taking in on a regular basis and maybe spitting back out into the world, the people you surround yourself with, and whether you feel there's a reciprocity there and shared interests, maybe how these elements are shaping and inspiring you to achieve a dream, whether that's in your career or in something else that you're doing. So I would say questioning how you feel about what's worthy of your devotion right now and where you place your attention and your time, and whether these things are actually bringing you security and happiness. I think the 6th, 12th house eclipses can be a little confronting. So you could be grappling with the fallout of that and making some sacrifices and taking risks where necessary, knowing the reasons why you're doing them and tuning into your body for backup and validation. Letting go of what's familiar can be a risk in itself. And maybe this is about releasing rigidity and allowing yourself to just be more free with that Sagittarian third house. There could be a lot of movement and obligations to take care of in your environment. Maybe there's some roadblocks there and having to devote certain time to what you got to take care of in your health or responsibilities versus certain passion projects that you have. And I think later in the month, with your ascendant ruler Venus squaring Saturn, there could be some self doubt that seeps in, maybe some insecurities. But because of the superior square, I'm hoping that this is about releasing the need to prove yourself and just acknowledging, for your own benefit, the personal limits of where you might be overdoing it or overexhausting yourself working or overstretching to appease people around you or people that you work with. Just accomplishing things in your own uh, perception of the rhythm around you. I think boundaries are a really big part to this month in general with Saturn, but also with that Cancerian Jupiter ruling all of this in your 10th, just paying attention to how you feel in your body and what feels good. With Sagittarius ruling the third, I think y'all have some really big ideas of what you want to pursue. Sometimes you can be a little preachy, but I do love someone who's confident in sharing their opinion. So I think there could be some conversations that are challenging during this month. Maybe the Pisces 6th house, you feel that your intention is to help and to, check in with others. And maybe you need to check in with yourself and figure out how all of this is fitting into your life, focusing on your habits, your time management, and really pacing yourself so that you don't meet capacity too quickly. You could be collaborating, you could be asking for help because your dreams are worth it. And just making sure you don't give up on something that's important to you just because it feels frustrating or that it doesn't work out the first time or that it doesn't turn out in the way you initially envisioned. So I think this month is about careful, strategic planning, communicating with patience, making room for others' opinions as well, cultivating some honesty and discernment about your routines, what you can handle energetically, and how you can really build out a sacred routine and self-care regimen that truly lasts long term. Because eventually, with Jupiter in your 10th, currently retrograde, but next year we'll be doing a lot, I think you're working towards building a career or legacy or impact that you're going to be really proud of.
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, I'll just add one small thing, which is that for Librans, I keep thinking of the Vedic perspective of the third house as a place of courage, persistence, competition, which is really it at first, if you understand that this is a kama house that has to do with pleasure and emotional fulfillment and happiness, you go, well, like, why would this be a house of competition and courage and bravery and persistence and effort and practice? Well, it's because there's a certain in Vedic philosophy, there's a certain kind of happiness in us that can only be satisfied if we cultivate skills and abilities that take effort, and that we then feel happy because we've acquired skills or abilities or confidence through effort. And then there's a sense of confidence and pride and self-respect, ego at worst, that we've built because we're just persistent, and we've developed and cultivated qualities in ourselves that make us feel happy about who we are. That's interestingly connected to the third. And I'm thinking right now, like, Librans who are out there just working away at things that you're trying to build and develop, what kind of roadblocks are you hitting? Sometimes you're working hard, but the validation isn't there, or there's something unfair or something underhanded that you have to deal with. Saturn and Neptune in the sixth could be a detractor or an obstacle or a feeling of something that's insurmountable that doesn't feel fair considering the effort that you're really putting in. And this could also be associated with what feels like swings of fortune in the career house with Jupiter ruling it that are sort of maybe wild or unanticipated. On the positive side, I could also see this being a period of time where, look, hard work, perseverance, sacrifice, effort, maybe not right away, but in time, if you keep chipping away, are going to lead to some breakthroughs and growth professionally. Jupiter's retrograde, but it's exalted. It eventually is going to turn direct. You got a lot more time in there. So persisting right now could pay off in the long run. Okay, let's move along to Scorpio. Brings us back to Emily. And I'm going to back this up by 1 day to get Mars back into Sag there. All right, so we've got the square between 2 and 5.
Yeah, so, as with all of our water risings, speaking of the Indian philosophical ways of looking at the houses, which, by the way, you can get on the Kickstarter. It was what I did with my Kickstarter contribution last year, the masterclass series that went over these houses. Fantastic, highly recommend it. But as with all the water risings, we have here a combination of the Arta and the Dharma houses. In this case, with Scorpio, we've got all the Sagittarius planets in the second house, Arta house of Sagittarius, and then the Saturn, Neptune in Pisces in the fifth, which is a Dharma house. This, to me, is just reading fairly simply as a conflict between the ambition, impatience. I love, Kelsey, that you brought up the cultivating patience, because I think of Sagittarius as one of the two least patient, with Aries also, least patient signs in the zodiac. And as a Sagittarius sun, I can say that's true. That there's an impatience, a will, a drive, an ambition, a desire for the accumulation of resources here with all of those planets moving through the second house of Sagittarius. That there, whether that is actual income, maybe there's a desire for increased income, or there's a desire and ambition to move towards skills or time, or just a sense of security. There's an impatience around wanting to achieve some sense of security materially. That's in conflict with, if I keep pursuing this impatiently, or with that as my motivation, the accumulation of resources, then is it going to be at the cost of my actual pleasure and joy? With Saturn and Neptune in your fifth house of creativity, self-expression, pleasure, joy, play, is there something around, Saturn having been there since March of 2023, with the exception of a few months this summer? Has there been a real wet blanket feeling around what brings you joy. Like, has it been hard to tap into that, to tap into your pleasure, your joy? And this is now showing up for you with a conflict between, okay, maybe you're a creative person, just as an example. You're a creative person and you're feeling a sense of like, I've got to put something out there that's going to sell. I've got to put some put some content out there that's going to get a bunch of viral hits, and that's going to drive more people to my platform, and then I'm going to get clients or whatever. But that motivation, the ambition for accumulation, is maybe creating a writer's block or a creative block in your fifth house, because it's not coming. It doesn't feel as authentic when the motivation is to be heroic in that second house of resources, right? As we talked about before. So I'm wondering about that. I'm also wondering if possibly some challenge with a child is coming up, or some obligation with your children, if you are a parent, is coming up that causes some friction between your ability to pursue some resources. Maybe you're wanting to take on the job that's going to give you more money, that has a higher pay, but you're really not able to because you have to care for a creative project or a child or something like that. So that's generally what I'm seeing. It feels a little like that's the low-hanging fruit, is conflict between joy and material security, essentially, for this month of December.
Love that. The main thing that I was thinking about was how material needs, bottom lines, or like a business philosophy or approach that maybe there's a lot of enthusiasm about, is in dialogue with, creative authenticity. And this is also a good time for that conversation to be mediated by a guru, a sage, a philosophy, a religious or spiritual path. And maybe there's some, like, for example, I could see this being a time where, someone who has a really hard time, sometimes I've noticed this a lot. Sometimes people have a hard time charging people for readings when they get started. They feel inadequate. They feel they're just getting started, and this is a spiritual topic. And so it can just feel sort of yucky at first to charge money. Mm-hmm. And many times I always admire people who are being cautious and humble and careful with their material interests around a spiritual thing. That's a good instinct. And it can also keep you from becoming a practitioner and serving something bigger than yourself, because you do have to earn a living in this material world. And that's why these two philosophical areas of life, Artha and Dharma, coexisted. You can't, you can't just shun material existence because you're above it when you're not. At least not until you're ready to go to an ashram in a lifetime, but like most of us aren't there, So yeah. So anyway, I will just echo that piece of what you were saying, Emily, which I really appreciated. Okay, let's keep it rolling. We're gonna move along. Our final fire sign of the day, cues up. We've got the square between Sag and Pisces in the 1st and 4th.
Yes, Sag risings. I am right there with you. So we're going through this December together, y'all. Okay, so it's definitely going to be centered around our identity, our sense of self and expression of self. We have, like Adam said, the squares happening between our 1st house and that 4th house of our roots, our foundation, our security, our ancestral realm of knowing, of familiarity and patterns, and exactly, or is what is expressive in that 10th house of what we show out in the world. So with those two houses, the 1st and the 4th, really being highlighted and reassessed. They've been getting their work done. We have Mercury working that 12th and 1st house. So really like the subconscious backstage, really asking like, who are you becoming and what identity no longer fits? Like what back mechanics, like inner working worlds that have been at play really subconsciously fueling the way in which you move, speak, think about yourself, and then therefore express yourself and work in this world. How has that change been reflected, been revised? What new truths are coming out from those deeper realms and being brought and birthed into that first house of expression and moving through this world? But then how is that coming into conflict with what you've been birthed into through family, through community, through ancestral knowing and practices? So you can also see the questions around like what kind of foundations support the person that you're becoming and what type of foundations don't support and uplift that individual that you're trying to be, that you envision yourself becoming and growing and expanding into. There could be a lot of like familial storylines and beliefs that you are now sitting with and wondering, do those actually serve me? Do they even apply to the individual that I see myself manifesting and bringing into all of these new blessings and of abundance? But maybe unfamiliar, unknown to the self. But is it worth exploring? Or is there a way to synthesize what I've learned from that fourth house, what has been my knowing since childbirth, throughout my years of like just experiencing familial relationships, whether that be in my household or family that I've created for myself? Do these family systems, do these roots of pattern actually fuel what I'm trying to have my tree give fruit to? If we're looking at the fourth house as like the roots of your tree, what fruit is it bearing from who it is that you are actually living your life out as in that first house? The way that you dress, the way that you carry yourself, you express yourself.
Uh-oh. I think we might have lost Q. Can you guys hear her? All right, we'll see if she, I'm going to just remove her really quick and see if that helps. Sometimes it just helps if we like reboot. No. Oh no. Okay, well, we're going to wait. I'll just wait and see if she pops back into the green room in a second. And I'll just finish. Those were great thoughts. I liked where she was going with that. But to me, questions about identity and ancestry, where we come from, we're trying to become something, but our roots keep dragging us back. It's like, to me, this dynamic reminds me so much of that famous quote from Ram Dass: if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. You're heroically progressing along the Sagittarian path. You're finding yourself, you're swashbuckling through life. Then all of a sudden you got to go spend a week with your stinky family. I'm kidding, but like it drags you down, makes you feel regressive. There's something really important about that regressiveness. I remember James Hillman wrote about this at length in a lot of his texts. He said that we think of life as something that is always about rising above, like a culture that has become completely absorbed by the hero myth thinks of individuation as the premium. And family can be regressive to individuation. It certainly can be. And family can be the little ingredient of humility for the hero archetype if it's become egotistical. It's like, you're not that special. Come back here where we all know you as, Messy Mal or whoever you are back at home. You're talks too much, Adam, at the dinner table, and you can't escape those things. And it's not just that we have to therefore cut ourselves off from our families. And, it's also that there's something unavoidable or inescapable about being flawed and imperfect and embodied. And the family often pulls us back to that space and is actually very humbling. And that's why I think I think that quote is so famous, because Ram Dass is saying, like, yeah, we get on these trips of feeling enlightened and like we're healing and growing and evolving spiritually. And you go back home and it feels like it's all getting flushed down the toilet. I don't think he's saying that's bad. I think he's saying we should think about why that is. There's some ego wrapped up in our spiritual evolution at times. So anyway, I think these are very interesting ways of considering that access. Let's keep moving because we're running out of time. And I do see that Q has returned to us. So we'll make sure that we plug her at the end here and get her back in. Let me set this up for Mal next. We've got Sag and Pisces across 12 and 3.
Yeah, Capricorn risings. We've got some action in the 12th house of what is unseen and perhaps some more unconscious energies. And the third house is a little bit more about our local environment and also maybe the things that are more on the forefront of our mental energy. And you've had Saturn here for quite a while now. So I think there might be a lesson potentially being triggered about, I'm thinking about the expression of emotions. And I'm also thinking about this moment I had in the past couple weeks with my own astrology students. We happen to be talking about Cancer energy. And of course, me and a couple other Cancers in the class were kind of talking about how, oh, we feel people's energies and emotions and la, 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 cue the Cancerian stereotypes. And the one Capricorn rising in the class, she goes, yeah, I've really been learning that, if you feel it, it's your responsibility. and me and the other Cancer risings in the class were like, oh shit. But then I thought about this in the car, driving home from class, and I was like, a Capricorn rising would tell us that, because not only is the Capricorn rising having Saturn transiting the third house, which does have a lot to do with communicating our emotions in a more genuine, vulnerable way. But also, this square is being ruled by Jupiter transiting the 7th house, Capricorn risings. So maybe there has been a lesson recently about what is mine versus what is yours. What is my partner's bad day versus my good day? And how do I separate from that? Where are my maybe subconscious tendencies to leap into fixer mode or emotional manager mode in order to balance out whatever journey my partner, my friends, or my close relationships are going through, versus what do you actually need to care for your own mental health and those inner resources. And I think there's a real clarity here for some reason for the Capricorn risings, especially with this square. Just that clarity that we are all responsible for our own emotions. Saturn and Pisces in the third house, emotional responsibility. And someone's feelings aren't your own. And what we do with our feelings and how we express them is our responsibility too. So there also might be a moment, maybe this holiday season for the Capricorn risings, where there's a real responsibility that is taken by you to be like, yeah, that kind of upset me, and I'm going to communicate that, or, I actually need a day to myself. So I'm going to take that. It's nothing to do with you, but I'm going to take some space. And yeah, that's what we all need. I think there's a real opportunity for some honesty, but it comes from this place of emotional maturation, which is, I think, a lot of what Saturn and Pisces has perhaps been working on in the third house. Yeah, that's how I'm seeing this for the Capricorn risings.
I love that. Q's been having some technical difficulties, so she's trying to log back in right now, but I'll comment on this. So this is a very specific scenario that came to my head and will probably not be applicable for a lot of Capricorns out there. But for those who it may speak to, I hope it's helpful. There are times in life where we think we're moving forward, but we're actually standing still. Or we think we're moving forward, but we're actually moving backward. Now, the reason I could see this being an issue is because that tendency of Sag in the 12th is to think that something regressive or self-destructive is moving us forward heroically. And that's like the thing we can't see. Now, Saturn and Neptune in the 3rd can reinforce that by creating some real delusions mentally and emotionally also that we're moving forward when we're not. Let me give you an example. I was once listening to an herbalist whose teacher was an indigenous herbalist, and I don't remember the tribe, Native American tribe of North America. And they said that in their wisdom tradition, which is certainly not the only one, so don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but marijuana was considered a kind of trickster plant, and it was sometimes referred to as the liar in their language, because it would make people think they were moving forward when they were standing still. There was a lot of thought that, and I think about it nowadays, like, when I was in my early 20s, there was a portion of time where I spent my life stoned on the couch thinking about all the great things I would write rather than writing. You know what I mean? And I think that's just funny, because I can also say honestly that there's like THC, marijuana has played a really vital role in some actual creative work in my life, right? So I don't think it's not black or white, but everyone knows how something like marijuana can actually get sometimes people can get stuck thinking that a lot of things are happening and they're actually caught in a kind of fog or haze. And this is actually a conversation that's been happening a lot more now in therapeutic communities around psychedelics, especially the use of THC. Like, for many people, it's medicinal, it's healing, it has a really powerful and positive use. And for other people, it can actually develop a dependency on it that's not entirely healthy. And we're realizing that conversation is not black or white. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is because it just illustrates how a 12th house Sag for Capricorns right now could be giving you the feeling that you're really moving forward, but that there's something you're getting stuck in or lost in, and it's creating the illusion of progress that's really not there. That's a very specific thing. I'm sure it's not applicable for all Capricorns, so don't hear me wrong. But if that's you, just consider, like, what are the actual tangible markers of progress or development or work or success or growth? Because if you check in on those things, you may find that there's some level of inertia that needs to be overcome, or some level of illusion that needs to be set aside so that real growth can continue. Okay, well, again, that's a very specific take, but we'll move on from that and go to Aquarius and the square between 11 and 2.
Gotta love that Saturn and Pisces sobriety. All right. So for Aquarians, I'm thinking about, well, first, these are between the comma and Arta houses, these squares. So pleasures of playing a social role in the world, your communities, and your aspirations within them. And then we've got the second house, all about material security and the cultivation of resources. And some of these things can actually be just what you bring to the table to offer. I'm thinking about the Grand Water Trine occupying the Arta houses. So maybe the mutable squares are about making some big decisions surrounding your role in social groups and what you learned during the last couple months, and how you approach work and your professional matters, whether you're deriving that joy, that Sagittarian joy, so that also you're not burnt out trying to make a dream possible. Thinking about Jupiter ruling these houses in the 6th, and how themes just in general around resources and how they're distributed within the groups that you're a part of, maybe coming to terms with the end of one role and embracing a new one, even if that means you have to make some sort of sacrifice here. And I'm thinking about the risk of just leaping into a new field and letting go of a stream of income that maybe was steady, but perhaps stressful due to the social obligations of the job or the labor that it requires. And I'm thinking about one specific Aquarian that I know who has worked as an art professor, but he has a side hustle as a tattoo artist. He's been doing his apprenticeship. And I am cheating here because he did tell me this, but he's taking the risk of making his tattoo gig his main gig. and letting go of the stream of income from the university job. And I just thought that was so perfect for the Sag 11th house. But I know that that comes with, a loss in a way, because one, the material security of having that flow of income, but also just the joys of being a teacher. And I think with Saturn as the ascendant ruler for Aquarians in the second, you've been working really hard. You're diligently committed to cultivating your skills and your resources and trying to use them very strategically to not only create security for yourself in the material world, but also satisfaction. So maybe some goals have dissolved so that maybe others can be validated as important enough to continue that hustle. You might be questioning whether the people in your community really appreciate what you bring to the table, while also considering whether you feel fulfillment in certain groups, or perhaps looking at it another way could be just a financial responsibility right now to save money. Could be as simple as that, and maybe just not traveling for the holidays to visit your friends, or not being as social because you're feeling so exhausted from work. Maybe these social life changes are preferred, maybe they aren't, but I think the lesson with Saturn and Pisces is that sobriety, that faith in the timing of your life, and that patience and trust are really antidotes for any doubt. So maybe just checking in with self-care routines this month, and really surrounding yourself with goal-oriented people that have a shared vision that maybe can pump you up, but also using that discernment in your social world to where groups could be maybe a little preachy. And I think collaboration here could come with some need to compromise so that the shared vision can come to life, and just allowing yourself to be flexible here. So maybe thinking about how you stand out in groups, and maybe the way that you stand in your leadership skills as well. And just an overall clarity surrounding what's realistic in terms of your social aspirations, and maybe which fantasies are dissolving so that others can continue that creative process. So maybe if you run into some challenges this month, there's likely opportunities on the other side that are just a little different from what you were initially expecting. And that's what I've got for my Aquarians.
Yeah, one thing that comes to my mind here is that, Aquarians, I think most Aquarians have very noble principles, ethically, morally, often quite visionary, and still, one thing that air does elementally is it goes from air into water and falls down to the earth. There's a lot of bringing Aquarians down into the earth in the sky right now through the water trines, in the Arcta houses, right? So material houses, watery energy. This is a time where, as noble as Aquarians are, like I don't see a lot of Aquarians lacking humanitarian principles, but sometimes Aquarians won't. The principles will be there, but sometimes the empathy, the actual lived empathetic emotional connection to the principles can be more challenging. And in my experience, growing up in a family of Aquarians, when Aquarians' principles meet with being pulled into more, emotional experiences, it can actually enlighten and deepen the principles and make them more adaptive and flexible. Because one of the sort of secret shadows of Aquarians is inflexibility and rigidity, and sometimes even intolerance. So one of the ironies of, liberal politics or liberal ideology is that if you're not, as people who are trying to be broad-minded, if we're not careful to be flexible in how we carry our open-mindedness, then open-mindedness itself can become rigid. This is something I feel like a lot of people who are probably more liberally oriented have been exploring over the past years, with Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius and Pluto entering Aquarius. It's like the shadow of great revolutionary movements is the way that the revolution can end up becoming a new dogma. those are all things that we have to very sensitively look at. And then the water can help us carry those principles with more sensitivity and tact and care. Because the last thing you want is to be like a nice guy with an iron fist, you know. It's like a nice girl with an iron whatever. So anyway, the point I'm making here is that for Aquarians, I feel like the intersection between your most passionate convictions and a softening or sensitizing or deepening of your principles through greater flexibility, receptivity, you know, that could be something to look at right now, which is truly a blessing, because if you marry that water and air with Aquarius, I think you get like the highest manifestation of the water air marriage in Aquarius to me is like agape, you know, that kind of that sentiment of like universal compassion married to elevated principles. So anyway, just some thoughts there. All right, let's move to Pisces, last but not least. As always, Emily, take us away.
Yeah, so this one, I mean, and this is me. I'm a Pisces rising with a Sag, Sun, Neptune, midheaven. So I'm not talking about my own life right now at all. But I think this one feels like in the 10th house with all of those Sagittarian planets, there's this kind of list of keywords I've been using: ambition, drive, passion, desire, new thoughts, awareness, impatience for achievement in the professional sector or in the public sector, the work that you're doing in the world. There's something that perhaps there's a real enthusiasm. I love that word for Sagittarius. Adam, you brought that up. Enthusiasm for purposefully and maybe egoically reaching for a sense of visibility that feels like it's purposeful. You feel connected to it. And what's happening with the square to Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, but you're realizing that these big dreams that you have are maybe limited by your getting older or your physical, mental, emotional limitations. And again, we've talked about this a lot, but Saturn's been in this house for the majority of the last almost 3 years. There's hopefully, for most of our Pisceans out there, we've been maturing and growing up and recognizing what our limitations are, what boundaries we have to set for ourselves around our own abilities. And that can be really hard when you have this dreamy, optimistic, let's go on the great adventure in the 10th house of the place, you know, that you want to show up and shine in the world. So I feel like, again, this feels simple, but some kind of conflict between the enthusiastic, optimistic, inspiring way that you want to show up in the world, in the public, in the work you do, in your profession, and that being at odds with the limitations or boundaries that you have to set for your own self, for your own health. You know, like I used to be a dancer. I would love to show up and get on stage and dance, but I'm 45. That's not, I have physical aging limitations now that like I can't do certain things, and that's hard to come to terms with. But this might be a moment this month of December where we're really wrestling with those big picture dreams for visibility, and then what we can actually do in our current bodies in this current time. And as I said before, I think one way to really lean into this is that Jupiter, your ruling planet, and also the planet that rules both Sagittarius and Pisces, 2 of your angular houses, in the 5th house of joy and creativity, and just to kind of, lean into what does bring you real joy and happiness, and to trust in the process that this is part of a real maturation process that hopefully leads to mastery and deeper emotional maturity as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that the conversation between the 10th and the 1st was, these are the two houses that most astrologers during the Hellenistic era ranked as the two most prominent or powerful houses. When planets are there, they tend to be the loudest in the life of the native. And for good reason, because we're talking about your essential nature, your spirit, soul, your body, and your inherent character that's meant to be explored and lived in this lifetime. It's like saying we're looking at the protagonist of the movie or book in the 1st house, but the 10th is telling us about what they're meant to do in the world, how they're meant to show up there, what influence, power, or position they carry, what role they play, how they contribute to the society in which they live. So a powerful conversation taking place for Pisceans for quite some time around character and personality and essential makeup. Right now, the last chapter of that conversation about selfhood and dharma is taking place just the next couple of months before these two planets move out and move on. Some last squares here from the 10th house suggesting that you might be coming to some kind of final moment of testing or of a kind of stress test of where you're at between your work in the world, the direction it's taking, and the evolution of character. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's not small stuff, especially with the Jupiter in the 5th, which is also a Dharma house, asking you, well, like, how do you feel? What is your creative essence in the world? And how do you feel happiest with showing and sharing your creative makeup? So no, it's big for Pisces for sure. Pretty existential over the next few months for Pisces, as both those planets wrapping up in your 1st house, and eclipses are going to continue forming there for just a little bit longer, and then the eclipses move on. But it's like, yeah, wow, it really feels like a end level boss in a video game, like like Mario Brothers or something for Pisceans. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much. Unfortunately, Q internet is down. We had a big winter storm here. It seems like it's probably affecting her internet in Minneapolis.
And Mercury is still retrograde as we record this. So.
That's right. That's right. This felt like, we're recording this as Venus and Jupiter are getting together, and it just felt like such a nice collaboration today. I was really just appreciating that as we were going along. I want to tell you how you can get in touch with these fine people. Let me promote their work here. Let's go to Mal. You can find Mal on Instagram @_Mallory Hasty. And Mal is always producing very lucid and thoughtful astrological content. I can't recommend that you follow Mal highly enough. And then Mal, what is the website? Help me remember.
That's okay. Website is same as the handle. It's just malloryhasty.com. And anybody can just find it in the link in my bio on Instagram.
That's right. I think that's where I've been pointing people in the past. That's why I thought I had a website for you, but it's just, you can find the website on the Instagram profile. Book readings. Mal, if you're in the Chicagoland area, is also, sometimes I've noticed you're teaching in the area and doing things. So connect with Mal in that if you're a Chicagoland person. Let's go to Kelsey. Hold on. I've got all of everyone's. Okay. @Metanova Girl on Instagram. Where you can find Kelsey's good work there. And then is it astrologyrx.com?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So booking readings there. Anything else we want to plug before we go?
I just want to plug, donate to the Kickstarter, guys, because there's so many rewards you can get. As Emily stated, I think I did a master class or two over the years, and it was super helpful. And it also feels great to donate to a Kickstarter, and it's fun to kind of like get in the game there and see what happens. So yeah, really recommending that, because there's tons of things you can get. Even just a calendar with all the dates of the transits in 2026 can be super helpful.
Thank you. That is super appreciated. I want to plug Emily next. Let me go on to, I have my whole list here. So we have @Emily T Astrology on Instagram. And then the same is just emilytatimer.com.
That's right.
Tatomer. Is it Tatomer?
It's Tatomer, yeah, but that's
Tatomer,
okay.
sorry.
Tatomer, I don't mind.
So, but bookings can be found there.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to plug?
No, I do have a special rate through my birthday on December 5th if you want to come see me right now. So do that. And then, yes, of course, the Kickstarter. I took a leap of faith 4 years ago. It was 2021. And I donated to the Kickstarter for just a 1 class pass. And that's how I got my start at Nightlight. And here I am. So you can do it too. Do it.
Super appreciate you. Thank you for that. Yeah. It's a great time to get your class passes. Oh, finally, before I forget, because we lost Q, Instagram for Q is @sensualnoir. And in Q's bio, you can find link to all of Q's stuff. Good follow. All of these folks are awesome to follow. So yeah, on that note, we will be seeing you again for January's horoscopes, and that will come out the very end of December, beginning of January. And then in the meantime, after I sign off right now, you're going to find an informational video about all of the different rewards we have when you support the Kickstarter. You support 7 days a week of free content on this channel year round. This is our 12th year of doing this. You're supporting a whole team of people. You're supporting the ability that I have to distribute some of the content to people like the ladies here, to build up our students and our community, to develop need-based offerings for people in all the things that we do, to host speaker series that are free, to host free meditation gatherings, to host meetups in Minneapolis for free. So much of what we do is about giving back. And once a year, you can support us and help us keep this going. And when you do, we don't want you to get nothing for it. So you can pick a reward. And there's tons of really good stuff that, including our class passes, which end up being about 50% off our course costs. So check out the rewards next. I'll tell you more about them, and we will see you again next month. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you about the different rewards that are available when you donate and support this year's Kickstarter. Remember, our goal is to get to 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve, and your contribution makes a huge difference. But when you do contribute, there are a variety of really cool gifts that we offer only once a year through the Kickstarter campaign. So I'm going to take you over to the Kickstarter and tell you about what those are. You can also find more information about almost all of the rewards on our website, nightlightastrology.com. Any of the programs that you might want to take, all of the details about those programs, their start dates are all located on the website in case that's a question. But at the top, you'll notice on the right-hand side, when you're scrolling down on the Kickstarter, you're going to see the different rewards that are available at different pledge levels. The basic pledge level is the Astrology of 2026 calendar. This is a really nice PDF calendar that we make that gives you a feel for what transits I'm going to be covering on the channel as the year goes on. It's also really nice to know what the transits of the year are day by day. So if that appeals to you, it's the most basic level of pledge, and you can get that. Scrolling down, you can also bundle any of these. So if you want multiple rewards, you can bundle them upon checkout. You'll see how that works when you're in there pledging. Scroll down a little bit. There's a new talk that I've made. This is a brief talk on the value of silence and having a silent or meditative practice in your life, how you might get one started. And again, just what I see as the value of that for astrologers. Scroll down a little bit more, you'll see the Astrology of 2026 audio and video. This is an exclusive lecture where I break down all of the major transits and astrological signatures for the year ahead. I'm not releasing this anywhere else, so if you want my insights for the entirety of 2026, this is a great reward to pick up. Scroll down a little bit more and you'll see that I have a guided meditation that I've created for your year ahead. This is more about spiritually, psychologically, emotionally focusing yourself for the year ahead. It's a special kind of guided meditation and visualization that I've created. So if that sounds appealing, you could pick that up. It's called The Oracle Within, a guided meditation. Scroll down a little bit more and you'll see that my new book, which I plan on starting at the latest by the summer of 2026, you can get in on that chapter by chapter first draft release in audio and text form, just like The Oracle Speaks, my first book that I just finished. This is a new book that I'm starting in 2026. So if you wanted to hop in on the early release for that, you could do that there. Scroll down a little bit more and the description of that book and what it's all about is right there for you to check out. Year ahead horoscope readings. If you want to receive about 6 hours worth of content going through horoscopes for 2026 for all 12 rising signs. This is a great offering that's going to give you, again, about 6 hours worth of horoscopes for all 12 signs for the year ahead. I'm not releasing anywhere else, so check that out. Then you'll notice as you scroll down a variety of different archived master classes from previous years. There's one on the lunar nodes in ancient astrology. That's about 10 hours worth of content. The magic and mystery of the fixed stars, again, about 10 hours of content. Zen and the art of zodiacal releasing, and the alchemy of the outer planets. These are all lengthy master classes that I taught in previous years, about 10 hours of content per package. So a really great deal on some advanced content there. If you are brand spanking new to astrology, check out Astrology for Complete Beginners. This is a course that we have. It's about 10 to 12 hours worth of content that's meant for people who are brand new to astrology. This is like astrology level 0. So, but if that's you or someone you know who might benefit from just like a basic introduction to astrology, check out that audio video course. You get a website where it takes you through everything. You can watch it at your own pace and time. It's all recorded. The next offering is Ask 3 Horary Questions. You purchase this one and you get the ability to write to me anytime throughout 2026, 3 separate occasions to ask 3 separate horary questions, and I respond to those via email. That's a really great service that saves you significantly off the course of horaries because you're bundling 3 together. So a really nice gift to use for yourself. Ask a couple of questions to me through horary form throughout the year. Scroll down and you'll see that I have only 30 of these. These are year ahead mini readings, very exclusive because I don't give readings anymore. I have students and staff taking clients through a special reading service. So my readings are very limited to classroom spaces, but I have 30 of these exclusive mini readings where I give you my take on your biggest transit for the year ahead in your birth chart. Those are personally recorded and sent to you. Then you'll see the 2025 Masterclass bundle, the 2024, and the 2023. These are, like upwards of 30 hours of content that are going to give you really deep exploration of a variety of topics. So those masterclass bundles are taking multiple series from previous years and bundling them together in one package. And you can see all the topics listed there through the 2025 bundle, the 2024 bundle, or the 2023 bundle. A really great way to package together a lot of intermediate to advanced level content that I've taught in the past. Then if you go down, the new 2026 masterclass series that I'm teaching is on the decans. So if you're interested in learning more about the decans and the upcoming 2026 masterclass, check this out. It's on sale right now through the Kickstarter. Won't be this cheap again. So a really good way to save on joining that program in 2026. If you have any questions about that program, you can find more information on the website through the page that's dedicated to the masterclass. Scroll down and you'll see we also have a new Nightlight Guild membership. This is ideal for people who are already enrolled in Nightlight or in the kind of Nightlight pipeline as students and are looking for more practice, more study at an intermediate to advanced level. We're meeting twice a month and doing live client readings, live horary workshops, a lot of practice with advanced concepts and techniques. So this is ideal for people who are really looking to continue developing within the Nightlight sphere. And so students in Nightlight, check this out, come study with us. This also includes every monthly webinar that I teach on the year, plus twice monthly meetings that are 2 hours each for advanced practice. So really nice to have a guild membership. This is something I've been wanting to develop for a while. Check that out. Scroll down, you'll see both of my wife's herbal apprenticeships, year 1 and year 2. If you like Ashley and her work, her YouTube channel, we own the same LLC. So we just thought we'd throw in her herbal apprenticeships at a discounted rate if you want to join those. And then really our most popular item are the class passes. So you'll see at the very bottom, you can attend 1 Nightlight course, 2 in a bundle, 3 in a bundle, or 4 in a bundle. And what that allows you to do at a really significantly discounted rate, this is our best sale of the year. We only do it through the Kickstarter. In those class passes, you can bundle and take year 1, year 2, year 3 in Hellenistic natal astrology. You can take the horary class, or you can take any yearly master class. And those class passes are going to allow you to then bundle together our programs and go through as many as you want. You could bundle 2 of them together, 3 or 4, or just 1. And it's going to be the best sale that we have on our courses for the year. So those are the different rewards we offer. If you have any questions about any of them, feel free to email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. We deeply appreciate your support, and I hope that in exchange for donating and supporting this free content year round, that you will also find a valuable reward in one of these offerings. Remember that your donation supports a staff of people, myself, my family, the free production of all of this content year round. We deeply, deeply appreciate your contribution. All right. Hope you're having a great day. See you later. Bye.